Hello and welcome. I'm ChriSOULa Sirigou, the Golden Muse, and on this episode of Prosperity IQ videocast, I am delighted I've got Davina MacKail with me. Davina has been on my health and healing show a few times already. She's been somebody who's actually worked a lot with Rachel Elno and Source TV. She's a Hay House author, very much involved with Shamanic Healing and Feng Shui, I would say, expert, because you've already got a book out there, Davina, about Feng Shui and lots of other things. So I'd like to welcome you on today's episode.
Thank you, ChriSOULa. It's lovely to be here, especially on such a beautiful day as well.
Yes, beautiful. So prosperity, I have, going through this exploration of prosperity, and I would like to demystify, that prosperities are actually linked only with money. It is linked with money, but we like to see it from different angles. So knowing your own journey, having connected with you, I know that you and prosperity, and also the idea of wisdom, inner knowing, as we like to call it, is something that you're really passionate about, and you have spent a lot of time in working with Shamanic Healing as well. So let me ask you first, what is prosperity to you?
Prosperity is what you have left when there's no money in the bank. That's for me in its simplest way. I would actually like to break the link between prosperity and money entirely, actually. Because I think money is very much the true false prophet, and is definitely at the root of many of the issues that we have in today's world, and where we're not really kind of aligning. We need a new system. We need something to replace the monetary system. I know that's probably a little way in the future, but I would like to start that process. If you look at a lot of the symbolism and the hermetic principles around money and how it's been used, you start to really see the darker side of how it's been involved, and how we're all obsessed with it, or lack of it rather, because it really is the haves or the have-nots. So prosperity is, how rich do you feel inside? Who would you be if you had no money? Would you still be okay with yourself, or would you think you'd failed? Would you still be a success? Would you feel good? Would you be able to hold your head up high and still feel okay with who you are inside? That is prosperity. To be able to feel absolutely all right with who you are, despite how much you have or haven't got in terms of physical, actual pound notes in your pocket.
Right. So it's not how you connect with prosperity in physical terms, but more like how you connect on the inside.
And also, on the inside, and also just how you connect to the world around you. Like, I feel ridiculously rich at the moment. I live in a place surrounded by forest, and the forest in spring, I can't imagine how anyone could not feel deeply abundant being in a forest in spring. I'm foraging for my food every day, so I can have wild food on the table for supper. The spring leaves are coming out. I've been collecting flower essences, making gemotherapy. I mean, there is so much food and richness and abundance. It provides the wood for our fires. It provides shelter for us if we need it. It provides a home for so many of the creatures. It's beautiful. There's so much abundance just around us in nature. And when we deeply connect to nature, we cannot fail to find abundance. And you get taught, the forest teaches us abundance. Because the forest doesn't make any effort. It's not fighting with its neighbours or anything like that. It just is. And it recycles itself. And at the moment, the leaves are bursting forth in that new cycle of regeneration and regrowth. And it's like, spring is here, and we're so happy to be alive again and be able to spread our leaves and blossoms and bud into being. And that's abundance.
Yes, equally, because as you know, I come from Greece. For me, the sea is the abundance of the sea, and the blue. You wear blue today. It's all about being in the flow and being open to possibilities.
Yes,
open to say yes to life, and even though you don't know what's happening out there, if you see far ahead, you don't know where it was going to take you. You start from the inner knowing that things will work out. Start trusting that things will work out. And that's what, I totally agree with you. That's what nature, Mother Earth, is actually remind us every day, every single moment, that there's always enough, the abundance of things, and the cycle that we're going through. Again, prosperity, if you think about it, you can actually go up and you can have a lot in terms of money, but then you can go down, and then you may go somewhere, you need to find out different ways to bring more money into your life, or you need to look at yourself from a different point of view, different aspects. So yes, it is abundance, and nature, and Mother Earth, and water. Although I'm a wood energy, I still connect a lot with water, because water feeds the wood.
Yeah, exactly. And water is very much, and also because, as you rightly say, it's cyclical. Prosperity is cyclical, like all of life. We have the in-breath and we have the out-breath. We have the incoming tide and the outcoming tide. There is always that ebb and flow. And again, because we're so conditioned into believing there's only this one trajectory of upwards, forwards, progress, more, we lose our connection to that cyclical nature, that it's okay for there to be a pause, for a dying down, for a consolidation before there's new growth again.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, now is a great time for prosperity. It is that spring, that sap is rising, the energy's rising, we get lots of new ideas, we feel very inspired around this time. We kind of wake up, we've got more energy to do things, we want to get up earlier, we want to get out and about. Yeah. So this is good in terms of our prosperous cycle. This is a very healthy, abundant time.
Hence why I'm inspired to do this as well.
Yeah. Definitely. It's
good. I wouldn't see myself doing back in in January, let's say. So fantastic. Now let's move on to another big thing, because I can see behind you that says wisdom that works, and the word wisdom connects a lot with who you are and your teachings, and all the path the paths you have gone through and where you are at the moment. So if we like to say wisdom, I would like to start by wisdom. I would like to say it is the richness of all the experiences we have accumulated over the years. So
I have a different definition of wisdom.
Okay. But equally.
Because actually, yes, that's part of wisdom, those experiences that we've accumulated. And the reason it says wisdom that works is because that works aspect is implying and meant to imply a more active principle. If we go back to ancient times, in Greek and Roman times, there's something called the trivium of knowledge. It was like a trinity of knowledge. Mm-hmm. And actually what comes first is knowledge. We have to seek information. Mm-hmm. We have to seek information, but knowledge for its own sake is not very useful. Knowledge only becomes useful when we understand it, when we sit with it, we integrate it, we process it. If you took a computer analogy, it's like put in the input, then it processes and you get an output. So actually wisdom is the output of knowledge and understanding. And so wisdom is actually action. Because when you have knowledge and understanding, you have the wisdom to act. Mm-hmm. And we are acting, so we're acting from a wise place. And if we can put that into a silly little example, it's like knowledge is to know that tomatoes are, a fruit, whatever, or sort of like not a fruit, but or disguise a fruit. But then wisdom is to know not to put them in a fruit salad, to take the action to not combine them because it wouldn't really work. But see, so knowledge and understanding are a very key factor in that, and they're what lead to inspire. So it's like inspired action, because when we have understanding of the information and we can process it, then we can act in a wise way.
Right.
So yes, knowledge and understanding comes from accumulated experience, but not everybody processes their experiences in an understanding way. Sometimes we can just seek experience, can't we? There are people in the world that just seek experience after experience after experience, not really sitting with what did we learn from that? What did I understand by that? What came out of that? How do I want to act in the future based on what I've understood from this information that I've received or that I've sought? And I think this is something that we're really losing, is like, it's very interesting. I think we are soaked in information these days, literally. I mean, dripping with it, like everywhere we look.
Yes.
There's very little wisdom. There's very little action being taken because we're almost drowning in information with no understanding. And we've lost our ability to even know what's true in a lot of that, because there is so much. It's like, what's the truth anymore?
So wisdom and truth are interconnected.
Yeah, it's like, and it is like experiential. It's like, okay, I take this knowledge, I apply it in my world, it gives me understanding, it's consistent, because if I keep applying, I mean, I think there are certain natural laws in the universe, like gravity is a fairly consistent law. You know, doesn't matter what you believe, how much faith you have, you know, if you walk off the edge of a cliff, you are going to smash on the rocks below. It doesn't matter what you believe. That's going to happen. There isn't such a thing as the law of gravity. There are certain, you know, natural laws that are incontrovertible facts. The law of cause and effect. If you, you know, take some kind of action, there will be a corresponding reaction to that. You know, what we look at, we're living with the effects, but we rarely bother to look at the causes. What's beneath that? Why has that happened? What's the root? Where are we going back? This is where we really get to understand wisdom and understanding, and really, like, there is the knowledge and actually analyzing and processing. But again, it's all fed to us. It's overload. We're in overload. So we become almost like hypnotized by it. We become in a trance, so that we're no longer actually analyzing. We're just receiving things, and we don't bother to sit and go, was that actually true? Does that work? You know, what if I applied that in my life? Is that actually going to happen?
Yes. But at the same time, what do you think about over-analysis? Because when we actually over-analyzing, maybe we're losing the connection with our sort of central, with our core, and we're very much up here. You know, sort of the ego. The ego kicks in then.
Yeah, and I completely agree. This isn't about over-analysis. This is about applied action. It's back to acting. I think we've lost our ability to act many times, and action is really important. Action is why. But action without thinking, action without, or not even thinking, you can park on the side. I don't believe in over-analyzing and thinking too much. But action without understanding is a different thing. And it's not about, you know, like, knowledge is, if I turn the heat on, there's going to be something heat. But understanding is that if I put my hand on it, it's going to burn it, so I'm not going to do it twice. Right? So then in future, when I turn, I'm mindful of the heat. That's wisdom. I'm acting in a mindful way. I'm not over-analyzing or rationalizing that. I've just learned something that applies each and every time.
So I like that, acting in a mindful way, or in a more conscious way, if you like. Yeah. Okay, so sometimes we actually use wisdom as our inner wealth or the inner knowing. What's your take on that?
Well, it is our inner knowing, because for me, it's like, as I said, we've got all this information overload. We can, you know, think about things forever and get lost in the navel gazing. But, you know, the inner wisdom is, I'm going to take this piece of information, I'm going to experiment with it and see what occurs, and I'm going to act on it and see what the result is. So again, this is how we know truth. This is the only way, I think, today that we can truly know truth, is for this inner knowing of ourselves, to practice it ourselves, not take what anybody else says, including me. Don't listen to anyone. You know, think, oh, that's quite interesting what she said or you said, and let me go and look at that and see if it works for me. And that applied wisdom in that way, and that's our inner knowing, so that we really can stand in our own center, our own power, and go, because it's about owning our sovereignty, our monarchy, our own sovereign right to our own wisdom and understanding.
Well, that kind of you know, if you like, gold, the color gold, very much encapsulates all of that we just talked about. So it is about your inner wealth, your inner knowing, and actually it's very much about your authenticity. So you are authentic when you, exactly what you said, you select the information, you bring it into you, and you say you apply whether it's actually good for you, feels good to you. So in a way, that's we've got a bit of gold back there as well, don't you? Is that in wisdom that works? Is a nice kind of gold there as well?
It is a bit of gold. And there is gold all around us. We actually physically have gold inside of us, so there's lots of inner knowing. But perhaps we could mine ourselves when the rest runs out.
So and the more we actually we go deeper, and then we go deeper, and we say we choose what is true for us and what is not true for us,
and when we go deeper, when we sit with information and let it, and it's not about getting in the mind with it, because if we get in the mind, we get into the ideation, and that trips us up. It's like, what's behind the mind? What's behind? It's like, hello, behind the mind and the emotions. It's like just being the witness of it, but letting it percolate, often looking through dreams or symbolism or messages that show up. When wisdom shows up for me, it'll be a piece of information I've heard, or some knowledge I've learned, and I'm pondering it. Like, I'll go for a walk in the forest, I let go of it, but I just have it sort of sitting there. I'm not obsessed with it. I'm watching what's around, and I let nature teach me. I find the forest one of the most profound teachers on so many levels of how I react or interact with the forest, how the forest interacts with me, the creature, what crosses my path, how it is. And you start to see, it's like, if I take this piece of information out here, how do I see it working in nature? How do I see nature applying this piece of information? Now I can see how it works. Now I can understand. So it's a more of a pondering and a percolating, I think, rather than an analyzing or overthinking.
Yeah, what you say is more like connecting also with your intuition, more intuitive.
Yeah, because we live in a symbolic universe. Everything is symbolic. Everything is, it's like we live in a pattern, basically, and we have to understand how to interrupt the pattern sometimes when we need to, and we also need to know how to read the patterns in order to understand the symbols that are showing up.
Well, actually, the question I meant to ask you was, what is it, one practice you bring into your everyday life that connects you more or deeper with your inner knowing, with your inner wisdom? And you just said is your connection with the forest.
Yeah, the forest, certainly. But also asking myself. I ask myself regularly all the time, hello, who are you? Who am I? And just checking in, who am I? Who am I? Because we can get lost.
Yes.
It's so easy to get lost, particularly in the chasing, this idea of progression, everything faster, more. And particularly these days, everyone seems to be knowledgeable. Everyone's an expert. There is so much, as we talked about, information. And it's like we can get very lost in, I'm not good enough, I don't know anything, I can't keep up, I'm so behind, I haven't read this and I haven't done this and I haven't caught up this. So we, it's like, let's just stop for a minute, pause. What's the one most important thing that needs to happen? And there's another powerful question I often use when I'd rather be out in the forest rather than doing what I should be doing, probably, is what's the one thing that if I did it today would move my business further on that I don't really want to?
Okay.
Because often we avoid the one thing because maybe we have fear around it, or maybe there's something underneath that. So I always ask what's the most difficult thing? What's the one thing I really don't want to do today? But if I know that if I did it, would move me forward fastest.
That's a good question, that is. Yeah. Challenging, but
always. But if we don't challenge ourselves, what's the fun? It's fun to challenge ourselves. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. That's how we develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So if somebody comes to you, then one of your clients, it could be a new client or somebody who has come back to you, and you know them really well, and they ask you a question, about they're stuck somewhere, they have tried certain things and they're not moving ahead, whether it's a business related or it could be professionally related, personally related, like with a relationship. That for me also brings you in a state of prosperity, being in a loving relationship, or being sort of recognized and having lots of clients coming to you. That could be another way of seeing it. So what would you say to them? What steps would you take with them?
First of all, I'd dig deeper. So I'd ask them, for what purpose? For what purpose do you want that prosperity? For what purpose do you want to be in that relationship? Because often when you dig deeper and ask that particular question, for what purpose, you find out that that's not really what they're looking for. That's just the means to an end. It's like what's really is like, I want to be happy, or I want to relax, or I want more time off, or I don't want to feel alone anymore. And that's actually the real issue. It's not often the presenting issue. So, I want to be prosperous, or my business, well, for what purpose? Well, because I want my kids to go to a good school, or I want to be able to move house, or, okay, so for what purpose? And keep drilling down, for what purpose? And then you will get to something like a root cause that is probably very simple. or much easier to work with, or something that is revealing the lack of that may be keeping that person stuck, or some different view of that, that in order for them to move on, that maybe they've not realized has been sitting under there.
Right.
So yeah, always dig deeper always asking for what purpose. It's a good question for any of us to ask. You know, when we think we want something, for what purpose?
Right.
What do we really want it for? You know, we think we just have desire, comes up on the surface, but when you dig deeper, it's often something entirely different that we're really seeking. And often those things are for free. They're often things that we can just give ourselves. You know, we can choose to be happy. Happy is an everyday choice. It's not something you can get.
Yeah.
It's something we give to ourselves. And in many of these things, it's like, you know, stuff happens, things happen, difficult things happen in life. You can still choose to be happy. There's a wise old kind of Zen master, like, whatever happens, ha ha ha. Whatever happens, ha ha ha. And it's a good philosophy to live by.
Yeah, it's the attitude you've got. Yes, and it's a choice. It's a choice.
And that joy, that truth of happiness, because again, we have to be very careful and mindful what we ask for. I've seen this a lot I work a lot in circle with all sorts of groups and different things. And often we have intention rounds, and people say, oh, I want patience, or I want peace, or I want, you know, X, Y, Z, prosperity and money. But in that wanting, of course, how the unified field, the God field, if you like, reads that, it's like, oh, there must be the lack of that. So it'll give them more of what the opposite of what they're actually asking for. So, for example, somebody asks for patience, right? What they'll get is not patience. They'll get lots of opportunities to develop patience. So they get the opposite. You have to be very careful with this whole intention thing. So it's like, in fact, I actually don't really like an intention. It's better to actually be what it is you're seeking. This is what the real meaning of this whole idea, when, you know, with getting a lot of the law of attraction, when they say you have to have the right vibration. But I don't think people always really understand what that means. They're still, in a sense, putting that in front of them. It's like, you have to be it, because then the unified field will magnetize and attract more of what you want. If it's constantly just outside of you, or you're wanting it, then you're experiencing at some level the lack of it. That's all you're going to get, is more of the lack. Yeah. So it's really digging deeper to go, what are you really seeking? What are you really looking, so that we can get you in resonance with that? Like, so if it's peace, then pray peace, be peace. Just be it. Just, you know, work on that, learn to be that, or joy, or whatever that is. And then the rest will kind of unify and coalesce into reorganizing itself around that. We'll attract more of that in.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So prosperity and inner knowing. But I would also like to bring into our conversation your journey with shamanic healing. Because it is a wonderful opportunity to have you here, and then really, I know it is a big thing, and I know we don't have the time to explore everything, but something that you like to bring in the conversation that would give us a little bit of an understanding of what shamanic healing is. Just how can the shamanic healing sort of open a gateway to more prosperous life? So I don't know exactly. I'll leave it to you to.
Yeah. So I don't actually believe anyone heals anyone else, for a start. And so I think what shamanic healing, or any form of healing in its true self, is, and particularly shamanic healing, or in the way that I've been taught and practiced, what it does is we can get stuck. We can get blocked energy. We can get things that occlude our truth. So what I see is, what you're doing in the shamanic healing is you're opening up those channels. You're clearing where those blocks are, or those darker, heavier energies are. You're lightening it so that the field, again, of that being can basically go into a self-healing process. So you create the space. It's like a bit like space clearing. When you clear somebody's home, you're not magically, putting all those, you might want those blessings to come in for them and all that. You have obviously a good intention, but what you're doing is clearing the space so that the home and the people in it can realign and reorganize themselves. The organism, because every single organism on the planet wants to come into a homeostatic state, a state of balance, a state of harmony. So it's the primal will to good. Constantly, the generative force on the planet is constantly bringing that primal will to good that wants to bring that into balance. So what any kind of healer is doing is creating a possibility, a field of space, a field of possibility to allow that. It's opening up the space of higher energies to allow the organism to rebalance itself, to come into that possibility of self-healing. So that is how I would see it. Shamanism is also very good because it likes to use lots of accoutrements and fun and, you know, feathers and smoke and all sorts of wonderful things. But really, in a sense, there is a little bit of, it gets the conscious mind out of the way, and then it allows the unconscious mind to go to work.
Right.
You know, sometimes, you know, people need to feel something's happened in order for them to open up to their own healing potential. You know, again, we've been taught very much in our society not to take responsibility. Someone else will sort it out. The government will sort it out. The police will sort it out. The teacher will sort it out. The boss will sort it out. Anyone, the family, the parents, anyone but me will sort it out. And so, again, we have this thing of like really, shamanism is very much about teaching people to take self-responsibility, but sometimes you have to lead somebody to that path. You have to lead someone into the knowing of the fact that they can take that self-responsibility and that it is safe to do so. So holding that space and creating that space where they get to see the possibility and the potential of what is possible. And shamanic healing is also like, if we have accidents and trauma to the body, we often get parts of our soul split off. Parts of our spirit will get stuck in that time or shocked out of the system. So shamanic healing is very, very good for also calling back disparate parts of self to allow all the bits to kind of come back together again. Very good on that potential. And again, it realigns us with the natural world. All shamanic healing is about the four elements. It is deeply connected to Pachamama, the moon, the fire element, the wind, the bird, the kingdoms. It's reading the symbols. It's showing nature around in a healing. Anything that happens in a healing is teaching the shaman something about what is going on with that person. So again, there's a lot of, one of the main sources of shamanic healing is divination, being able to read those signs and interpret the signs. Any form of shamanism will have some form of divination attached.
Right.
And it is because it's like, again, it's just somebody that has trained in that particular specialism to be able to interpret the conversation that is always going on between any person and the universe around them. There really is nobody out there. The entire universe is but a dialogue with yourself, ultimately. But sometimes you need a bit of interpretation to be able to understand the language the universe is speaking. And a shaman is, versed in that language, so can interpret those signs and help people to be able to see it for themselves.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Fabulous. I love the what you're saying about using the language and interpret what's happening around you, but also you being the shaman, actually you hold that space, and then whoever wants to go through that path of self-healing, they feel that safety to to surrender and then to cleanse and reactivate, because all the inner knowing is inside us. So sometimes it's not unlocked, and then sometimes is locked. Yeah. So it is a time that you say, I like to unlock that bit of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Davina. I really totally enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we complete this episode?
Yeah, there's something I'm very into at the moment, which is an ancient Japanese art of shonin yuku. And it's actually the art of forest bathing. And in Japan, there are 44 registered forests that are dedicated to bathe. And if you go to a GP with stress in Japan, they'll give you a prescription to go to the forest to bathe.
Oh, really?
I know, fantastic, isn't it? It's an ancient practice. So I really recommend anybody that listens to this, find your local forest and go and spend some time in it. Just sit and breathe with the trees.
Yeah.
They are producing oxygen, and they're, you know, it's incredibly helpful for us to just spend time breathing the air of the forest, especially if you live in a city or you live in a town or you live near pollution. We have so much pollution. Leave your phone at home and just give yourself the gift of a lovely forest bath. That's what I'd like to do with.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Davina. Thank you.
Pleasure.
I can see that those of you like to connect with Davina, or you like to know more about what she's actually doing, because she's a very active person. She's always involved with different things and workshops and different projects. So the website address you can find out more about Davina is davinamackail.com.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay. Brilliant. Well, Davina, thank you so much for being on the
Pleasure.
So thank you. Blessings. Okay.
And
Bye
you.
for now.
Bye-bye.
And we will carry on our exploration of what prosperity is with more guests coming on creating Prosperity IQ videocast as part of the online program that I'm launching on the 8th of May on Source TV, Golden Keys to Prosperity. I'm really excited and really honored that I've got all of you on this wonderful journey. Thank you again, Davina.
Pleasure.